Universal Islands of Adventure is a weird park because it has somehow changed a lot and very little over its 25-year history. The addition of the Wizarding World and various new rides have rejuvenated the park, but other areas are almost exactly the same as they were in 1999. Many of the park's opening day attractions are still operating today. Only a handful have closed. Triceratops Encounter, Island Skipper Tours, Dueling Dragons, The Eighth Voyage of Sinbad, Poseidon's Fury, and oh, there's one more. The shortest lived attraction at Islands of Adventure, Pandemonium Cartoon Circus.
Ladies and gentlemen, prepare to be dazed, dazzled, and delighted.
That's good, Bullwinkle, but not as spectacular as our next act.
We think you'll get bang out of it.
The circus is coming to Toon.
The show lasted less than a year and was largely forgotten about as its amphitheater has mostly collected dust ever since. Let's take a look back at this fleeting opening day Islands of Adventure attraction, its crossover cast of characters, its colorful soundtrack, and the sad abandonment of the Toon Lagoon amphitheater. This is the story of Pandemonium Cartoon Circus. Universal Studios Florida debuted in 1990 with a lineup primarily of the company's in-house franchises, such as Jaws and E.T. the Extraterrestrial. After the park's grand opening, Universal Florida began looking for ways to broaden its roster of intellectual properties and expand into a multi-day resort. Universal Studios in 1991 reached a licensing agreement with J. Ward Productions Incorporated, earning characters such as Rocky and Bullwinkle as well as Dudley Do-Right. Universal wasted no time getting these characters into the parks. In 1992, Universal Studios Florida began a Streetmosphere show called The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle, produced by Michael LaFleur. The little street show went like this. Dudley Do-Right warmed up the crowd before each showing in Production Central. Rocky and Bullwinkle, fresh off a big-time movie contract, eventually arrived in a biplane, which was crafted by John Weiser. Snidely Whiplash posed as their trustworthy agent and flaunted the duo's fancy trailer. Boris and Natasha, pretending to be their director, plotted to steal Rocky and Bullwinkle's movie deal. The show carried on with various musical numbers, skits, jokes, and special effects. It ended with a Daredevil circus act, which was a coincidental hint at what was to come. Meanwhile, Universal Florida was in the early stages of developing a second theme park called Cartoon World. The upcoming park would be a bit different than Universal Studios by featuring a variety of classic cartoon characters from other studios. This included the recently acquired J. Ward properties, Dr. Seuss, Warner Brothers, and King Feature Syndicate, best known for Popeye the Sailor Man. Cartoon World was planned to be a highly themed environment with innovative attractions, including a land themed to classic comics. Relevant to this story, one rumored Popeye the Sailor Man concept was a Roughhouse Cafe dinner theater. The live show would have singing and dancing sailors. The plans for Cartoon World, however, fell through as Warner Brothers allegedly pulled out of negotiations. Without Warner Brothers, Universal shifted the remaining concepts, including J. Ward and King Feature Syndicate, and began developing a new park, eventually named Islands of Adventure. The classic Cartoon Land carried over to the new plans as an island called Toon Lagoon. Toon Lagoon had an important role for the upcoming Islands of Adventure. It was being designed for a shoulder demographic, catering to the youngest and oldest park goers and everyone in between. Its thrilling water rides made it the wettest island in the upcoming park. That shoulder demographic could enjoy play areas and well-themed environments. Toon Lagoon would also have an amphitheater entertaining guests young and old with a live stage show, Pandemonium Cartoon Circus. For Universal, the venue was practical as it could be rented out for events and productions in the future. The amphitheater show, like many others in the theme park industry, was produced very late into the development of Islands of Adventure. The water rides were a higher priority. Pandemonium Cartoon Circus, like Toon Lagoon's other attractions, would not be ready in time for the park's soft opening previews in spring 1999. Even with a time constraint, the show was under good direction as Toon Lagoon show producer Christopher Stapleton had a background in Broadway. Pandemonium Cartoon Circus was produced produced by Tom Garrity and Scott Helmstetter. Andrew Lippa, who would go on to compose Broadway musicals, wrote the show's glitzy soundtrack. The music was recorded in Anaheim, featuring live musicians and talented voice actors singing as the classic characters. In Lippa's words, quote, "It's very cute," unquote. The show, starring the likes of Popeye, Rocky and Bullwinkle, and Dudley Do-Right, had a variety of mascot-style characters and live performers. The costumes were crafted by custom characters, USC Costume Shop, Elijah Cranich, and John David Ridge, who also made costumes for Hollywood productions. Inside the amphitheater, the handcrafted circus-themed set was designed by Bob Harris, with scenic work by Piper Productions. The circus-inspired backdrop, character murals, and glossy red stage made the whole venue vibrant. The set was installed very late into development as the park was nearing its soft opening previews. While waiting for the main venue to be ready, the cast went through their months of rehearsals in the Wild 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 West stunt show venue next door at Universal Studios Florida. The cast had the last-minute opportunity to run through rehearsals on their main stage shortly before debuting to park guests. Now having completed some circus training and months of rehearsals, the circus was officially ready to come to Toon. Before the park opened, the amphitheater hosted a week's worth of episodes of The Rosie O'Donnell Show, with special guests like NSYNC and TLC. The first and final episodes of the week had opening and closing numbers, featuring some cast from Pandemonium Cartoon Circus. As the park's soft opening wrapped up, Pandemonium Cartoon Circus was ready to make its debut to the public on Islands of Adventure's official opening day, May 28, 1999.
We are proud to unveil Universal Studios Islands of Adventure.
On its opening day, Islands of Adventure was split up into 5 themed lands: Port Aventry, The Lost Continent, Jurassic Park, Toon Lagoon, and Marvel Superhero Island. Toon Lagoon brought the Sunday funnies to life with a host of nearly 80 classic characters. Guests could get soaked to their funny bones on the land's 2 signature attractions, Popeye and Bluto's Bilge-Rat Barges and Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls. Families could jape around the play area, me ship the olive. The pathways of Comic Strip Lane were layered with silly soundscapes and visual gags, just like walking through the funny pages. About this land, Toon Lagoon show producer Christopher Stapleton said, quote, "From the music to the special effects, we wanted you to feel like you're in the melodrama," unquote. Toon Lagoon also had a Streetmosphere show, the Toon Trolley, but this melodic land was perfect for a revue-style show. That show was none other than Pandemonium Cartoon Circus. On the edge of Toon Lagoon and the nearby Marvel Superhero Island sat a 2,000-seat open-air venue called the Toon Lagoon Amphitheater, though media outlets at the time referred to it as Pandemonium Amphitheater. This venue had a tiered entrance plaza with a topsy-turvy neon sign displaying the show's name. The area was decorated with flat character displays, banners with acts from the show, a live ringmaster on stilts, and a sign with showtimes. An instrumental medley of the show's soundtrack played around the plaza. Inside, the venue had red bleachers with a runway down the center, and giant banners of acts from the show hung along the edges. Flashing lights of the show's name were on display above the colorful stage. Pandemonium Cartoon Circus had 5 performances per day, and the show went a little something like this. Pandemonium Cartoon Circus was a series of circus acts starring the residents of Toon Lagoon. Before the show started, Old Bill, the janitor from Mr. Peabody and Sherman, entertained the audience as they were getting seated. A small orchestral overture played, the characters chattered behind the curtains, and the show began. The music swelled into an upbeat fanfare as the lights flickered on, and the cartoon custodian sucked the grand drape into his vacuum, uncovering the grand circus set. The janitor started singing the first number, The Circus is Coming to Toon, a show tune style song led by Popeye and Olive Oil.
Everyone knows that the Sunday funnies usually live on the page.
The characters made their grand entrance one by one with their circus outfits. They all joined in on the singing and dancing, but their fun would be quickly foiled as villains Boris, Natasha, Snidely Whiplash, and Bluto crashed the circus and sang along. The song ended with a magic trick revealing Woody Woodpecker and the show's ringmaster, Bullwinkle. Following the song, the dastardly Boris and Natasha interrupted Rocky and Bullwinkle with a so-called gift for them that they'd get a bang out of. After a turn of events, Boris's bomb and his devious plan blew up in his face. The dazed Boris stumbled off the stage, and the ringmaster ushered in the next act, Dudley Do-Right and Barry the Hatchet. Dudley Do-Right and Nell Fenwick, now in colorful circus outfits, marched out to a majestic soundtrack for their axe-throwing stunt. As a part of the routine, Nell blindfolded Dudley. Their nemesis, Snidely Whiplash, took that opportunity to strap Nell to a spinning wheel of death, and Dudley was fooled into throwing hatchets at her. Nell escaped from the rotating table, but Snidely Whiplash kidnapped Nell to tie her on a railroad track. As Dudley rushed to save Nell, Rocky and Bullwinkle came out with a magic trick gag and announced the next song, Funny Business.
We're in the funny business, where all the laughs are free. And in the funny business, we take that seriously.
This was one of the catchiest tunes in Pandemonium Cartoon Circus. The campy cast sang about the ins and outs of the funny business. The villains were being a nuisance throughout the song. The big bad Bluto chased after Olive Oil, Snidely Whiplash got roughed up by Nell Fenwick, and Natasha deviously leaked helium on the stage. All the singers squeaked with high-pitched voices until Broomhilda snapped them out of it. The anthem ended on a high note as Snidely, Nell, and Dudley scuffled across the stage. Rocky and Bullwinkle, who was spinning plates, introduced Betty Boop and her glamorous song, Starstruck. A big band swing song kicked in, and Betty Boop descended from the rafters on a crescent moon aerial hoop. In a soigné fashion, she acrobatically swung around while belting out the beautiful ballad. Down below, 4 bimbo pups from the Betty Boop series climbed lampposts and did gymnastics to accompany the glittering number. Bubbles speckled the air, the dogs did backflips while howling in harmony, and Betty gave a quick as the curtains closed. Once again, Snidely Whiplash ran onto the stage with Nell Fenwick. The winded Snidely stopped to catch his breath, and Dudley Do-Right caught up to do the same. Snidely ran off after hearing a train whistle, and Dudley followed. Rocky and Bullwinkle set up the next act, Blondie and Dagwood, the Balancing Bumsteads. Blondie and the klutzy Dagwood skated around the stage, while Beetle Bailey and Zero fumbled around. Boris and Natasha butted into the show to catch Dagwood. Boris eventually punched him with a comically large boxing glove mechanism. The skit ended with all smiles. Led off by Rocky and a clumsy Bullwinkle, Olive Oil performed the next act, a tightrope stunt. Olive Oil's shaky knees were the least of her worries as Bluto showed up to resounding boos from the crowd. Bluto harassed Olive Oil, but Popeye came to the rescue, flipping his way to Bluto. Popeye confronted his archenemy on the tightrope. Bluto lit a match and threw it underneath Popeye and the tightrope, causing a fire below. Olive Oil turned up just in time to give Popeye a can of spinach to deliver the knockout punch that sent Bluto plummeting. Popeye rescued Olive Oil from the flaming tightrope. The cast celebrated, singing a song cheering on Popeye. Just then, Snidely Whiplash finally found a set of train tracks to tie Nell up. He held Dudley Do-Right at gunpoint while Nell squirmed. Woody Woodpecker chugga-chugga-choo-chooed onto the stage with a little locomotive, but Dudley stopped it with his hand, saving Nell. Even if this scene was a little anticlimactic and probably the victim of some budget cuts, the tunes got the last laugh. In Jubilee, the characters sang a song called The Last Laugh. They showcased circus tricks like Spanish web routines and balancing on a rolling globe. The cast giggled their way through the chorus, and the curtains opened, unveiling the show's grand finale with spinning plates. The villains interrupted the performance with a cartoon bomb. Old Bill hopped on the stage to clean up and somehow, someway, was able to save the day with his vacuum, and the cast swirled off the stage. Confetti fell, and the chaos continued into the song's final note. The curtains closed on Pandemonium Cartoon Circus. Old Bill swept the stage and thanked everyone one final time for coming. Guests had the opportunity after the show to take pictures with the characters. Real quick, thanks for watching. If you're enjoying so far, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Storybook Amusement. Thanks for your support. Islands of Adventure as a whole, upon opening in 1999, had an ambitious lineup full of thrilling attractions. Pandemonium Cartoon Circus was one of the few attractions tailored for families and guests of all ages. Islands of Adventure had a clear gap in its lineup. To address this, Universal quickly planned a few family-friendly attractions for Islands of Adventure, that being a junior roller coaster and a spinning ride. On paper, Pandemonium Cartoon Circus fit the park's family-focused needs. The show, however, didn't seem to pull its own weight as it was not in the park's long-term plans. Shortly after opening, it already seemed to be on borrowed time. Attendance for the show wasn't strong, and the park was quick to move on. The curtains closed on Pandemonium Cartoon Circus for the final time, February 29th, 2000, only about 9 months after first debuting to guests. Pandemonium Cartoon Circus was not planned to be temporary. As with many theme park shows, its success depended on its popularity. Whether the show would continue was based on attendance and guest feedback. To give Pandemonium Cartoon Circus some credit, it was a decently produced show. It had strong performances, clever songs, cute dancing, impressive gymnastics, some costume changes, and an infectious soundtrack with Broadway quality numbers. It flowed nicely and was enjoyable. Despite all that, the show was cancelled. It likely didn't last long for a few reasons. First off, it was produced quickly before the park opened. Maybe if it had more time in the oven with a bigger budget, it could have had a stronger impact. Besides, the open-air venue of course didn't have air conditioning. That matters to theme park guests in the Florida heat. Second, Universal hardly promoted the show. It was rarely mentioned in any marketing materials at the time, if mentioned at all. This was a time when the resort had notoriously questionable marketing efforts under the failed Universal Escape branding. Given that, Islands of Adventure underperformed early on. Perhaps the show closed as a cost-saving measure, having a large cast and low attendance. One more possible reason why the show was pulled so soon was its theme. Even at the turn of the new millennium, the show's characters from yesteryear weren't exactly relevant with younger audiences. Most kids at that time were watching Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, not vintage comics and cartoons. A Dudley Do-Right movie starring Brendan Fraser hit theaters in the summer of 1999, but it was a massive flop. The Rocky and Bullwinkle film the following summer was slightly more successful, but not by much. If those misfires were any indication, the characters of Toon Lagoon simply weren't popular to kids anymore. A Universal spokesperson at the time mentioned the closure of Pandemonium Cartoon Circus was a part of the resort's, quote, ongoing review of park offerings, unquote. Once Pandemonium Cartoon Circus closed, the Toon Lagoon Amphitheater did not get an immediate full-time replacement. The venue lost some of its circus theming and was used occasionally, though not as originally intended, but as a character meet and greet location. A Universal spokesperson said the resort was looking into concepts for replacements to fill the amphitheater. Rumors at this time pointed to a possible X-Men stunt show to complement the nearby Marvel Superhero Island. That never made its way into the park. Instead, the stage would be used on and off for several brief productions through the years after losing its signature show. For nearly 25 years, the amphitheater has not had a permanent show themed to the characters from Toon Lagoon. Here's what the venue has been used for. Seasonal extreme sports shows have been the most consistent productions in the amphitheater after Pandemonium Cartoon Circus. The first extreme sports stunt show in this venue was called Extreme X-Venture, debuting in the summer of 2000. The stage that once had Blondie and Dagwood skating around now hosted an extreme sports stunt show including BMX bikers, inline skaters, and skateboarders. The show tied loosely back to the Toon Lagoon theme with an appearance by Woody Woodpecker. Extreme X-Venture operated during the park's peak seasons from 2000 to 2002. Universal continued the extreme sports trend in spring 2003, bringing Matt Hoffman's Crazy Freakin' Stunt Show to the Toon Lagoon Amphitheater. This show featured BMX tricks on a 13.5-foot halfpipe. The show's name, which was based off the Matt Hoffman's Crazy Freakin' Biker series, was rumored to be mildly offensive to some parkgoers for the use of freakin'. The show ran seasonally through 2004 without a name change. A Matt Hoffman show returned in 2010 with, ironically, a circus theme. Matt Hoffman's Aggro Circus was an extreme sports stunt show similar to previous versions, but now with a globe of death and other stunts. This show ran seasonally until 2011. Even when the amphitheater wasn't occupied, Universal every so often used its courtyard for a few Streetmosphere shows. Temporarily around 2003, while the main venue was being prepared for another production, the amphitheater's entrance plaza hosted a street show called the Toon Lagoon Beach Bash. In the mid-2000s, the outdoor area was used for another Streetmosphere show called Toon Party. This show was probably the closest thing to Pandemonium Cartoon Circus since its closure. Toon Party featured a few of the characters from the defunct stage show and played a condensed version of Funny Business, a song from Pandemonium Cartoon Circus. In the mid to late 2000s, a band called the Outer Toons played timeless cartoon theme songs on a small stage outside the amphitheater. The amphitheater also held a few holiday shows, such as the Toon Lagoon Holiday Express in 2003. More notably, the venue hosted Bill and Ted's Excellent Halloween Adventure for Halloween Horror Nights during the event's run in Islands of Adventure. Bill and Ted spooked and entertained guests in the Toon Lagoon Amphitheater every Halloween season from 2002 until 2005. Every once in a while, the venue has been used for various productions and special events. From late 2006 until 2007, the amphitheater was the home studio for a weekday daytime NBC talk show called iVillage Live. Other special events and filmings include segments from a Celebration of Harry Potter event held from 2014 to 2018, the Incredible Hulk Coaster virtual reality preview in summer 2016, and a showing of an Impractical Joker segment in 2017, among other occasions. The Toon Lagoon Amphitheater is just one of Universal Orlando Resort's many underutilized theaters. The amphitheater has been lightly rumored to be replaced by an attraction, but nothing has happened as of yet. It is now mainly used as a backstage area, being rented out occasionally for competitions and events. It's a large venue that has gone without a permanent tenant for nearly 25 years. The Pandemonium Cartoon Circus sign was removed sometime in the 2000s, but some remnants of the show can still be found outside the theater. A few banners with the show's characters and performances are still on display around the plaza area. The original aerial loop also continues to play over the speakers. Fans of the show's soundtrack will be able to hear familiar melodies such as The Circus is Coming to Toon, Funny Business, and Starstruck, just to name a few. Since its closure, Pandemonium Cartoon Circus hadn't been seen by the general public in its entirety for over 2 decades. For the most part, the show was undocumented publicly. Only a few pictures surfaced online and even fewer video clips. For years, the show was considered lost media in the theme park world. As time passed without much footage, the show gained a less than positive reputation. Since 2021, the full show is now available to watch online for fans to enjoy. Despite the supposed shortcomings and limited run of the show, it still has a small yet adoring fan base. In 2023, more than 20 artists collaborated to re-illustrate Pandemonium Cartoon Circus. The project doubled as the unofficial release of the show's surprisingly well-produced soundtrack. Pandemonium Cartoon Circus had a lot to appreciate. It was a crossover of iconic characters with cheery music and good humor. For theme park enthusiasts, it was an interestingly rare opening day attraction in a major theme park. Pandemonium Cartoon Circus may have been an obscure part of Islands of Adventure's history, but the show captured the whimsical comic strip style of Toon Lagoon. The amphitheater, willing or not, stands as a reminder of the park's history. Too bad Universal turned the page on Pandemonium Cartoon Circus. But hey, that's the funny business for you. Thanks for watching, and special thanks to the Storybook Amusement patrons for making videos like this possible. Shout out to the producer credits, Parallel Discover, and Nick E. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more. Find the article version of this video and Storybook Amusement merch at storybookamusement.com. For exclusive content, join the Storybook Amusement Patreon today for as little as $1 per month. Thanks everyone for watching.
Working